What is up, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of Father Dynasty. I'm your fatherly host, Chew, here in the manhole, here to talk a little fatherhood, fantasy football, and everything in between. And I've got a very special guest with me today. When I think of Taylor, I think of Kansas basketball. I think of Indianapolis Colts football. I think of Atlanta Braves baseball. And I also think of Charlie's dad. So with me today is, you follow him on Twitter at tsutphin10. Taylor Sutphin, how you doing, buddy?
What's up, brother? I'm doing well. Ready to talk some sports, get some stuff fired up.
That's right. And I know, at least as of this recording, we are at the very start of this, what will be not very exciting Thursday night football game between the Patriots and the Bills. So hopefully we get a couple of text updates, and it's good things for both of us.
Although I do have Ramondre Stevenson starting tonight, and I also have Gabe Davis starting tonight. So
I'm thinking some tutties are in your future. That's for sure.
Yeah, especially with Ramondre, man. He's been killing it. So.
Oh, he's a stud. Well, we started off here with a keep trade cut. So are you ready for it?
Yeah, man. Let's get into it.
So I have to choose my favorite. I'm going to keep.
Oh, dear.
I will trade.
This is kind of wild.
The cut is easy, and it's the last one.
Keep trade cut, everyone's either favorite or least favorite fantasy tool for evaluating trades. And what we do here is every guest gets their own unique 3 topics for a keep trade cut. Keep, of course, first, trade second, cut third. And there may be a bonus one at the end, so we'll see. But are you ready for the first one, Taylor?
I am.
All right, so first one, how about that ride in? And while it is referencing a great movie in The Hangover, I know that you are quite the traveler. Mm-hmm. And while this is only picking 3 places you traveled to, again, there was not a big enough thing that I could fit all the places you traveled to. So this is not level of importance of ones, but ones I thought were really cool and within the United States. So Austin, Texas.
Okay.
Montana. I think there was a couple places in Montana you'd went to, so we'll say Montana as a whole. And the Grand Canyon.
Ooh, okay. Well, Austin holds dear to my heart just because that was my bachelor party. It was a fun vibe, fun environment. But with that being said, I probably would have to cut that one. Just because, I mean, that was more or less just kind of a guy's kind of rowdy weekend. And, so it was fun, but the stuff that I thoroughly enjoy doing is, probably the hiking, the sightseeing, exploring, that kind of thing. So, believe it or not, I probably would say Montana was number 1. So I would probably say that I would keep that. I would probably trade the Grand Canyon. Montana was just awesome. I got to go to, some different national parks. I was at Yellowstone National Park, Glacier National Park. Glacier National Park was probably one of my favorite national parks I've ever been to. So many awesome hikes, grizzly bears, moose, elk, nice. All kinds of crazy looking animals, man. It was awesome. So that's probably what I would do, what I would go with.
Nice. And, of course, Yellowstone, with the show being the hit phenomenon now, I'm sure it's pretty – I feel like the tourism to Yellowstone, if it wasn't already good, it's crazy now.
Believe it or not, I still have not started Yellowstone either. So, but it is kind of funny because I watched a Yellowstone documentary on National Geographic after I went, and it was pretty crazy because it was pretty spot on, everything they were saying. There's so many bison out there, and they are absolutely massive. So –
what I will say, is there anything like in the near future you're planning on, or maybe something like early 2023?
Yes. So me and Paxton, my wife, we're thinking about going to different places. We want to go to Italy for our anniversary, our 1-year wedding anniversary.
Nice.
We're talking about hitting up Yosemite National Park in California. We also want to go to Alaska. So definitely would like to go to those places. I mean, there's others, of course, but those would probably be the 3 if we were going to narrow them down, probably for next year.
Well, I'll say any place you travel, you always pick good ones.
Yeah.
So
I try to narrow it down, man. I mean, it's there's so many places though. Like, I didn't really get into traveling, like, kind of the stuff that I'm doing now. I didn't really get into it until Me and my brother went to Iceland in 2018, I believe. He got invited with some pharmacy friends of his, and that just kind of opened up my eyes. Like I wasn't even planning on going, and then just last minute went, saw some like awesome glaciers, waterfalls. I mean, it was awesome. And then I was kind of got the itch after that. So
There you go.
so now it's like, I have to kind of revolve my trips that we go around Paxton's school schedule with her being a teacher. So, your spring break, your summer break, that kind of thing. So,
Awesome. Well, I'll say looking forward to hearing what the next one is. But
yeah, man.
so traveling on to topic number 2 is Braveheart, and not specifically referencing the Mel Gibson classic, but Braveheart in the sense that you are a avid Atlanta Braves fan.
I am.
And picking 3 players here, I had a previous guest many months ago who's another Braves fan. I picked different players here, but there's a lot of storied players in that franchise. But I'm going to pick 3, one of which is a current guy, or a more recent guy. So Greg Maddux,
Okay.
Andrew Jones,
Okay.
and Freddie Freeman,
Freddie
a little more recent player.
Okay. You're hitting the heartstrings with the Freddie Freeman, man.
I figured.
Yeah, so, gosh, man, that's tough. I would probably have to. That's so tough. I probably would have to keep Freddie Freeman. I would probably. I'd probably trade Andrew Jones, and I'd probably cut Greg Maddux. That's so tough because honestly, Greg Maddux is probably the best pitcher in Braves history. But I played baseball growing up. I was an offensive guy. I love to hit, so I'll go with the hitters. Chipper Jones was always my favorite player growing up. I wore number 10 for like every baseball team I was ever on. I wore the high socks, everything that Chipper did. But once he left, I had to find another franchise guy. Freddie was that guy until he left last offseason. Andrew Jones was just probably the best defensive center fielder I've ever seen. He just made some insane catches that you thought he had no chance of getting to. And then, he's not in the Hall of Fame. That's, to me, a complete sham. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's good to know that there's a player like that, not making the Hall of Fame, but that they still get that kind of love from their team. Kind of like every team can have their own Ring of Honor, or whatever they call it. Yeah. So it's good to know that at least he will be appreciated. Because I know in Braves lore, he's the man.
Oh yeah.
So jumping over to another team of yours, a Colt Following, and this of course would be 3 Colts, and these are all oldies. So I could have gone with a couple of new guys here, but I wanted to see how you feel about the old guys. So Reggie Wayne, had to. Gotcha. Dwight Freeney, and Edgerrin James.
Okay. That one is pretty easy for me, actually. Reggie's my guy. Marvin Harrison was my guy. But I'll go with Reggie as a keep. I'll probably will trade Dwight Freeney, and I'll cut Edge. When I was growing up as a Colts fan, a lot of people ask me when I became a Colts fan. I kind of grew up in the Peyton Manning era, so Edge was an absolute monster, and then he tore his ACL. Was still good, but not at the same level that everyone was projecting him to be. But Dwight Freeney, his spin move was just insane. So him and Robert Mathis were like one of the best pass rushing duos ever. But with that being said, Reggie Wayne, and I've got Reggie Wayne jersey, had like some of the smoothest hands ever. He would catch everything. And I still to this day think that Marvin Harrison or Reggie Wayne, it's up there with like the Randy Moss, Chris Carter, like best duos of all time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was gonna throw in Reggie Wayne, Marvin Harrison. I was like, I didn't put Chipper in the last one, so I was like, I gotta keep one guy out of the this one.
Yeah, if you take Chipper out, you gotta take Peyton Manning out. That would be the easy answers. So
yeah, but all right, well, diving into some fantasy. I know that we've kind of talked throughout the season of just kind of different things, like with the drafts or just on a week-to-week basis. So, how's it going this year?
Yeah, I'm doing actually pretty good. Surprisingly, I have the exact same record. I'm in 2 different leagues, so I'm in like a redraft league and then a dynasty league. It's our second year of this dynasty team, our dynasty league. I'm 8-4 in both leagues, so nice. I'm tied for first in the redraft league, and I am, I think, tied for second in the dynasty league. So I'm doing pretty good. As always, I mean, you kind of look back at this point in the season, you're like, dang, man, I could have drafted this guy, especially in the redraft league. You're like, man, I took this guy. He's been out for like 6 weeks, and you're like, God, I could have had this guy. But no, overall, my team's doing pretty well. I'm pretty happy. I've pretty much already secured a playoff spot in my redraft league because I think we were only doing 13 weeks. We cut the 14th week. And then the dynasty league, I'll be kind of fighting it out, but I think I'll make the playoffs there too.
And I was going to say with the dynasty one, so how did it go last season?
So yeah, last year was the first year. So, we just had, I can't remember exactly. I know this year was only 5 rounds of the draft. Right. I can't remember how many rounds last year was, but I mean, last year was kind of building your foundation of your team. I'm trying to think. I think I drafted I think I had like the 7th overall pick. I think I drafted Derrick Henry. I think I got Justin Herbert in like the 4th round. I kind of took a stab at him before he really was even. I mean, he had a great rookie year, but 4th round on Justin Herbert. I mean, that's but I'm glad now he's a stud. So
yeah.
But yeah, I have a pretty good team, and I took a stab late in my draft last year on Ramondre Stevenson, and he's a set it and forget it starter every week now. So doing pretty good. I'm pretty satisfied with how I drafted last year, and then even this year, I got Isaiah Pacheco in the 5th round. This is one that I'm a little salty about, but I think it'll pay long-term value. I drafted Jameson Williams 4th overall. So obviously I passed up on like Olave and Kenneth Walker and just some other guys like, Treylon Burks. I'm just trying to like think of some names here. I passed up on a lot of those, and I haven't seen anything from Jameson, but he's going to be coming back soon. So hoping to get some value down the stretch.
He's one where, I think it'll be not this week, maybe next week. Which at this point, like with what the Lions look like, he doesn't have to play, or he could I don't know. I know there's the concern of wow, if they play him in the last 2 weeks of the season, how dumb are they going to feel if he re-injures himself? And they're like, all right, well, he's out for the beginning of next season too. But
yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of value. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, he's their number one. He's their go-to. But I think Jameson Williams, I think he's going to be. I mean, the Lions' offense could actually be pretty good. I mean, if they, I don't know what route they want to go as far as with Goff, like if they want to, because they have the Rams pick, and the Rams are doing awful this year. So hilarious. you wonder if they end up trying to take a quarterback early. So, but yeah, I'm pretty happy. I'm trying to think. I don't think I got value in the middle rounds because I took Malik Willis.
Okay.
And I don't really need Malik Willis. I mean, we can only, I think, have 4 QBs or 3 QBs. Now, naturally, I had Trey Lance, and then he got hurt for the year. So I'm starting Herbert, and then I randomly picked Heineke off waivers. So
nice.
I'm starting Herbert and Heineke on a week because it's you can play a QB and then an offensive utility guy, which everybody puts as a quarterback. So that's my 2 guys.
Dude, there's always those sneaky picks in the year. I mean, it's Heineke coming in to fill in for Carson Wentz for 4 to 6 weeks, and then he just steals the job because Wentz sucks.
Well, yeah, and I picked up Ellinger because I thought, because there was the alert that came out on Bleacher Report, Matt Ryan's going to be benched for the rest of the season. I'm like, okay, because at that point I had Herbert on a bye. I had Lance out for the year.
Yeah.
I needed a quarterback, so I dropped Malik Willis because I'm like, he's not playing at this point, and I need quarterbacks. So, which I'm hoping that doesn't bite me, the Malik Willis drop, but we'll see.
I mean, I know coming into the year, it's like, oh, Tannehill's not going to help mentor Willis. It's like, how is it a weird thing? Like, this guy he was a wide receiver that transitioned into being a quarterback in college. He was just getting his feet under him. He finally earned that contract in Tennessee. It's like, why would he's not going to just with open arms just be like, hey, I know I'm almost in my mid-30s now, so I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of step back and let you take the reins. It's like, no, he'll probably help him at practice and stuff, but He's like, I'm not going to give this guy the job.
I mean, everybody on the outside looking in, they want to hear that you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take him under my wing, and I mean, yeah, that's probably the best thing to say. But if you're a competitor, that's not what you're thinking.
Or it's like, hey, I'm going to do really well, and he can watch me do really well, and then he'll learn from that.
Yes.
Not me being like, I'm going to start sucking, and then you get all the opportunity. It's like, no.
It's a lead by example thing.
Exactly. Well, you had mentioned a little bit about some of the Colts. So, what do you think of the Colts this year? Do you think in terms of like with Saturday, with just the team as a whole, Ryan back as the starter for next season, like what do you think the team's going to look like now and in the future?
Well, I mean, obviously, Jeff Saturday got absolutely roasted when that decision came down. I mean, Jim Irsay is, he is one of a kind. Other than maybe like Dan Snyder, he's like one of the most well-known owners. I guess Jerry Jones too, but just he's kind of impulsive with his decision making. I did see the Frank Reich firing happening. It was just, I don't know. Coming into this year, I was very hyped. Coming into the year, you had the number 1 overall pick in fantasy, JT, consensus. I mean, he was a monster last year. I was expecting him to be elite again. Their offensive line, have ever since they drafted Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith, and they had Ryan Kelly as their center. They've had a really above average to really good offensive line, and then they paid some of these guys, and then they've regressed. And that's awful because they have one of the most expensive O-line. I think like three of the 5 have gotten paid. And so if they're regressing, that's not good. So, but it doesn't help that, the Colts, gosh, I mean, I guess Wentz was, somewhat mobile, but, with Philip Rivers and with Matt Ryan, I mean, you pretty much have statues back there. So, I'm not going to lie. I kind of wanted Jalen Hurts in the draft when he was coming out in the second round, but obviously that didn't happen. But still a little salty about the Wentz trade. I wasn't a huge fan of it when it went down. Then to give up a first-round pick, and then even with the Commanders trade, seeing Heineke play this well and kind of take over, there was a trade incentive that if Wentz played 70% of the snaps or led, I think, the Commanders to the playoffs with him as the starter, then the third-round pick the Colts gave up, it would have turned into a second-round pick or something. The Colts would have gotten a second-round pick if they had hit that incentive mark. That's not looking like it's going to happen. So it's looking like it's going to be a third-round pick. But in general, I mean, they've got some building blocks. They've got, Michael Pittman Jr., who, is their alpha guy. I mean, Paris Campbell's finally staying healthy. Alec Pierce has shown flashes, but I mean, their defense is pretty solid. DeForest Buckner is a beast. Yannick Ngakoue has like 8.5 sacks. Kwity Paye was coming on as a second year, breakout guy, and then he got hurt, hasn't played in a few weeks. Darius Leonard, or now Shaq Leonard, he has been battling injuries like a low back, ankle injury, and he had to get a second surgery, out for the year. And that's him and Micah Parsons and like Fred Warner. I mean, those are like 3 of the best linebackers in the league, so that hurts. But they have Stephon Gilmore's played well. They picked him up in the offseason. They have a pretty good defense, but man, they're just not scoring. I mean, I think they're averaging like less than 16 a game. And I mean, as well as I do, you can't win if you're consistently scoring less than 16. But I mean, it's just one of those things where, I think they played down to their competition too. I mean, they beat the Chiefs and they lost the Eagles by 1, and they should have beaten the Eagles. I mean, Jalen Hurts, I think he ran in a touchdown with like a minute left, and that was their first lead of the whole game. So they're just very inconsistent. The Jeff Saturday hire, I like Jeff Saturday. He's fired up. He makes guys, want to probably play for him and run through a brick wall, but I don't see if, looking at their schedule upcoming, I think they play the Cowboys Sunday Night Football next, and then they play the Vikings, then they play the Chargers, and then they play the Giants and then the Texans. So out of that stretch, the only win that you definitely see is against Houston.
Yeah.
The Giants probably a toss-up, but the other three I definitely see as losses. So it's kind of hard to think that Saturday will cement his spot if they lose, because he's already lost 2. So I don't know. I don't really know what direction. I mean, there's some talk that Chris Ballard, their GM, might get fired as well because, they should have been better than what they are, but I think they're still kind of fighting to try to find that guy post Andrew Luck. So,
yeah, that's the weird thing with that team. When you name all those players on both sides of the ball, it's like they're flooded with there's talent there, and it's not just names that are over the hill. Like it's talent right now. So it's such a weird thing how that season's turned out. I mean, of course, Frank Reich's gonna be the one that has to fall on the sword, but yeah, I have to believe Chris Ballard's not far behind. I kind of don't know why it wasn't at the same time, although maybe continuity's sake, all right, well, we can get another coach in there to step in, but he's the GM right now. Let's just let him finish the season, maybe see what happens. So I don't know what moves he could make in season at that point that could have changed anything, but
yeah. And honestly, getting to Jeff Saturday, that was not Chris Ballard's call. That was totally on Jim Irsay. So, that's not a good sign for Chris Ballard that, Irsay is making that decision over him. So that tells me he has no pull in decision making. If they don't finish the season strong, I think I could see him packing his bags too. But it's crazy too because across the league, Chris Ballard is extremely well respected. Is a talent evaluator. He drafts really well. So it's crazy. Like I said, coming into this year, I was putting them right up there with the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals as a team. If everything broke right and Matt Ryan played well, which I thought he would, I could see them winning the division and making some noise in the playoffs. But obviously now it's hashtag tank season.
Yeah, I guess it's the good thing of you never want to lose, and having Saturday in, if anything, was just all right, he will maintain morale as much as possible. Heck, if this thing works out, great. If not, he goes back to the booth. He's still beloved by all Colts fans. It's like he will not have his reputation tarnished. And Irsay doesn't. He's the owner. He's just gonna keep pulling strings how he wants to. Which it's always tough to see the owners. It's just they just kind of just start overriding decisions of nah, I got it. I'm gonna hire this guy. It's well, you hired the other people to help you. So are you just gonna unilaterally make decisions? You can.
Yeah,
but it's just how does that help?
He calls. I like Chris Ballard. I've definitely went on record saying that he's an elite GM in the past, but Irsay calls him a winner, and I'm but he hasn't won since Andrew Luck retired. Man, I still remember the day that I got the Bleacher Report and ESPN notification from Adam Schefter about Andrew Luck retiring, and I was absolutely stunned. I was it was 2 weeks before the season started, so it was a bomb drop. You got to get Jacoby Brissett ready.
Get him ready, yeah.
I was just man, that stung because at that point they were actually starting to build an offensive line. They took Quentin Nelson, and that was obviously what was getting Andrew Luck hurt so bad is the previous regime was they were just abandoning drafting O-line help. And they were signing over the hill guys like Frank Gore and Andre Johnson. And I don't know. They were one that big splashy sign first day of free agency, but not the smart signings. So, But anyways, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Right now they have the 14th overall pick. If they go into a downward spiral, which I think they will, they could probably sneak into that top 7 range. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. If just looking at the mock drafts, which I'm assuming you've done at some point, who do you think is the best or most elite quarterback coming out?
Without having fully dove through everything, I'm still on Bryce Young, if I'm being honest. There's something about, certainly from a fantasy perspective, wanting the mobility. And I know that he's basically a more lean Kyler, which is kind of terrifying because I remember when Kyler came out, everybody was just come on. Like, yeah, I know Drew Brees is short. Like, you have these guys here and there, but it's like, Kyler's going to think he can run around. He's going to get crushed. It's like, yeah. And I mean, Kyler has had some injuries, certainly, because, I mean, his running style it's electric, but some of the stuff he does is just like, you just wait for his head to get taken off. So I think Bryce Young will be smarter about how he uses his mobility, kind of in a Mahomes way, where it's like,
Yeah.
Mahomes and Rodgers, like, they're pretty athletic guys, but like they want to throw. They will run if they have to, but they know they have that in their back pocket. So I think that's going to set him apart and make him like the electric playmaker that someone's going to want. I can see why a team would love C.J. Stroud.
Yeah.
Will Levis.
Yeah.
It just drops off after that. I mean, it drops off before Will Levis, if I'm being honest. But I'm somewhat interested if someone takes a shot at Will Levis and kind of polishes him a little bit. But I don't know.
I've heard Anthony Richardson from Florida too. And he's a guy like him and Levis. Like some people are comparing Levis to Josh Allen, which, I mean, the funny thing about the whole Josh Allen situation is, I mean, he was from Wyoming, and he didn't play well his first year. And, he didn't really start getting good in fantasy until like late year 2, and then obviously year 3 and beyond. But I don't think people were thinking that Josh Allen was going to be this Josh Allen after his first year in Buffalo. So sometimes things you just got to be patient. But not everybody is Mahomes and Herbert right off, and even Burrow like right off the bat just balling. So I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, everybody's kind of they're kind of down on Bryce Young at, if anything, because of his size. But if you can, like you said, tailor, when to run. I mean, I think Jalen Hurts, he does a pretty good job of when he runs, he doesn't usually get hit very hard. I mean, he usually just knows how to get out of bounds or get down. So it's something you just have to learn, because Andrew Luck wasn't very good at that. I mean, he would just try to like bulldoze over to you, and he'd get a lacerated swing out of it. So,
yeah, well, we love football, and I know my baseball team, as we're going to talk about here in a second, baseball is a sport I know near and dear to your heart. Like you were saying, growing up playing that, I was not very good at it. But I do love some Red Sox baseball. Not so much this year, as they were last in the division behind the Orioles.
Yep.
I never thought in my lifetime that would happen.
Especially, here recently for sure.
Oh, man. But what do you think about, the Braves season? I mean, incredible finish, winning the NL East, going through. I know it was disappointing to see kind of how it ended in terms of just when you have someone finish that strong in the regular season. I know the expectation is just like, you want it to just continue. And when you run into that hot team like the Phillies, it just happens. Like life comes at you fast. But what do you think about the Braves and that crazy amount of talent?
This year, I mean, it was awesome. I watch Braves games pretty much every night that I can. This year was electric. I mean, last year's World Series run, it was somewhat unexpected. They, lost Acuna, had to make some trades, Jock Peterson, Soler, and all that last offseason, or last trade deadline, and then obviously they won the World Series. So you never know coming into the year if they're going to have that, World Series hangover, how the arms are going to do, with all those extra innings taxed on. But they started off kind of suspect, and then from June 1st on, I mean, they were the best team in baseball. They had the best record in baseball, and it kind of coincides with Spencer Strider, who finished second in the NL Rookie of the Year voting. He got moved from the bullpen to the starting rotation, and Michael Harris got called up from Double-A, and he was their number 1 overall prospect at the time. He got called up and was just an absolute stud. He was like 21, had minimal at bats in Double-A, skipped obviously Triple-A. And then it's like once those two guys got caught up, I mean, it was like a whole jolt of the team. Spencer Strider, I don't know if you've seen him pitch. This dude is a stud. I mean, he throws 100 with a nasty slider. He's got a nice stash.
I have seen that.
Yeah, he is filthy. He's got like this almost unhittable fastball just because it rises up into the top of the zone, and just it's kind of weird, the trajectory and the spin he gets on his fastball. But I think he only pitched like 130 innings, and he had over 200 Ks.
Wow.
So he had like
that's
the
efficient.
he had the highest K per nine ever over Kerry Wood. He was like the fastest pitcher
Wow.
ever to get to 200 innings in the few innings as he did over Randy Johnson. So I'm actually expecting like Cy Young, potential from him actually. Michael Harris actually won the Rookie of the Year. So, I mean, they had the first and second Rookie of the Year guys. So that kind of tells you anything. And the funny thing about it, neither of them were in the top 100 MLB prospect rankings at the start of the year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But no, their team is elite. This team was really good. I mean, they've got their superstar, Acuna, Austin Riley. They traded for Matt Olson. They did have Ozzie Albies. He missed most of the year with his broken foot, and then he came back and within like 2 games dove into second base and broke his pinky. So he missed the majority of the year, but they got really good production from their catchers and William Contreras and Travis d'Arnaud. So they had a really good team. Their pitching staff, Max Fried finished second in the NL Cy Young voting. Kyle Wright, which was probably their number 3, he led all of baseball with 21 wins. So, I mean, they just had a really good team. They had Kenley Jansen, Raisel Iglesias, AJ Minter, really dominant back-end bullpen guys. They had all the ingredients. I mean, they had to – I think a lot of it was them just getting burnt out down the stretch. I mean, the stretch run with the Mets, I mean, they were having to play over 700 winning percentage baseball just to have a chance to tie and or win the division, like at the end of the year. Yeah. And they did that. I mean, it was like 72 and like 32 or something over like a stretch of like over 120 or 110 some games. It was crazy. Yeah. But I mean, it at the very end of the year, like the next to last series of the year, and I think we may have been talking about it, but they were, I want to say, 1 game back going against the Mets. I think the last weekend in September, and they're pretty much their only chance to win the division was to sweep the Mets, because the Mets would have had the head-to-head tiebreaker if they didn't sweep, and then they sweep the Mets. So it was like, and they also had to beat DeGrom, Scherzer, Chris Bassett back-to-back nights. Yeah. And they didn't have Strider because Strider was on the IL with an oblique injury. So it was an insane finish. I mean, that last series against the Mets in the regular season was like postseason baseball. But then, like you said, you got to the playoffs, and there's always that team, and then there's the new format too that gives each league another wild card team, which of course naturally then the 6th seed was the team that was in the World Series. Any other year they wouldn't have been even in the playoffs. Yep. But they got hot, and hats off to the Phillies. They outplayed the Braves in every aspect. Outpitched them. Braves pitching in the postseason was just not up to par, which apparently I found this out after the fact. But Max Fried, he had actually left in the 5th inning of that Met series with a stomach bug, and he apparently over the next 2 weeks before the playoffs started lost like 15 pounds. Oh, wow. So he was still sick when he pitched Game 1 of the NLDS. And then Strider had missed a month with that oblique, and he came back, wasn't stretched out. So, I mean, not to throw excuses on it, but, I mean, they probably weren't at full strength. But the Phillies, man, they were just – their fans in Philadelphia were going nuts, too. Bryce Harper, the whole postseason, was just on fire. And it's crazy because he did all that with the torn UCL. So he just underwent Tommy John. I think he's going to miss like the first month and a half of next year, but then come back and try to DH, I think. So, but yeah, they just ran into a buzzsaw in the postseason. And as you saw, I mean, the Phillies, won all the way to the World Series, and they were up 2-1 in the World Series. So, I'm looking forward to the offseason and, seeing what moves are made, and, the race between the Braves and Mets and Phillies. I mean, it's going to be a grind next year too, so it'll be fun. Yeah, it was, just thinking about the Braves, of like how quickly they've grown in terms of the youth, how quickly the youth on that team has just maximized their potential, really. Even like you're saying, like they'd already done that before this past season,
and then they did it again with a couple of those guys. So it's good to see that. I mean, I know a lot of really any postseason sport is the timing of, are you coming into the playoffs hot? What are your matchups going to be? And what do your injuries look like in terms of, you could be at quote unquote full strength, but how recently have these guys gotten a chance to ramp back up, and who are they pitching against or what have you? So,
and that was a thing. That was a thing with Spencer Strider. He pitched Game 3 of the NLDS. This dude throws 100, easy gas, and he was mowing them down in his Game 3 start. And he would have been the Game 2 starter if he was healthy, but he was throwing like 98 to 100 in the first 2 innings, and we didn't know how long he was going to be able to go because he wasn't stretched out. And people that don't understand that, when you're out for a month, 6 weeks, your arm gets tired. I mean, it's very fatigued. So you have to throw minor league games or rehab starts, but they couldn't do that because the minor league season was already over. So that 3rd inning, he was throwing like 94, 95, 96. And the home run that he gave up to Rhys Hoskins was 93. It was the slowest pitch he threw all year.
Oh, man.
And he left it middle, and Hoskins just destroyed it, 3-run bomb. And that opened up like a 4-0 lead after like 3 innings. And it was like, come on, man. Like, this guy hadn't thrown that slow a pitch all year. So, but yeah, no, they're when you get to the postseason, like you've seen it. I mean, you've actually been pretty lucky as a Red Sox fan. It seems like when y'all make the playoffs, y'all do damage.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like the Giants. The Giants, they won a World Series in 10, 12, and 14. And I don't think any of those years they were the best. Going into the postseason, they were like viewed as the favorite.
Yeah.
But it's just all about playing good baseball, getting like unsung hero guys to step up. Like last year, the Braves had Eddie Rosario go, nuclear in the NLCS. He had like 24 hits in like 6 games. And he was hitting like 590 in the NLCS. I mean, and this year he hits like under 200. So you got to have that kind of stuff, just people coming out of nowhere. I know in the past y'all have had like Nate Eovaldi, just guys like Joe Kelly coming out of the pen throwing BBs.
Yeah.
Then you've always had your studs, Big Papi and Manny Ramirez, Xander Bogaerts, Mookie. So it's interesting. I'm looking forward to the off season, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I guess a couple of dominoes have fallen so far. I guess Jose Abreu, Anthony Rizzo, I think Edwin Diaz. I want to say some with the Mets, but I'm very excited to see what happens. I think probably the Verlander Judge ones are the next big things. I'm very excited for Judge just because, of course, I'm a Red Sox fan, so there's just a general disdain for the Yankees.
Yeah.
So it's not like if the Sox are out, I want the Yankees to win to keep it in the division. Like, ideally, I want them to not win whether the Sox are in the playoffs or not, just because I'm petty like that.
Yeah.
But, with all of the talent, like, the Yankees are basically they've always been the team they're just going to buy any bit of talent they can. And that, as of now, it's more so been the Dodgers that have been beating them out on that race, which what they've been able to do with trades and just throwing crazy money. But it's fun to see both of those teams fall and just see what happens when it's just good baseball. Not like Moneyball where it's like, oh yeah, the team with the lowest payroll. But I mean, you don't have to just buy a World Series. Like, you can do your best to try, but timing is everything. Like, timing and just, how they end up finishing it up. And where would you say in terms of those two guys, where do you think Verlander is going to go and where do you think Judge is going to go?
So I'm actually pretty confident that, I say this and I'll get both wrong, but I think Verlander is going to go to the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And I think Judge is going to go to the Giants. Judge is from California. He went to Fresno State. Talking about stupid money, Giants are trying to throw stupid money. I mean, they haven't really had face of the franchise since Buster Posey. So,
oh man, yeah,
that's a long time ago, right?
I was like, yeah.
I mean, they somehow they won 106 games a couple years ago. I have no idea, but
was that the Cueto led Giants?
Well, I want to say maybe. I don't know if Cueto was on the team. I mean, they had just a couple years ago they had 106 wins, and they had just random, like Brandon Crawford had like a breakout year. He hadn't done anything in like a couple years, and he had like 30 plus home runs. I mean, it was just kind of a random. Everybody like 30 and older were having like resurgent years. But speaking of petty, that's how I would have been with the Phillies had they won the World Series, with me being an NL East guy. But I think both of them are. That's where they'll land. I mean, the Dodgers, they don't have Walker Buehler all year. He got Tommy John, I think, late September. They did re-sign Kershaw. They just lost Tyler Anderson to the Angels. Edwin Diaz, he signed early in the offseason. He signed the highest reliever deal ever, like over $100 million. So
when you put that kind of money into a reliever, I'm like, that's a Mets thing to do. That's what.
Yeah, it is. And honestly, you're talking about teams that are just going ham spending. I mean, obviously, it used to be the Yankees, and that's why everybody hated them. And then Dodgers, you're seeing them like, for me and you, because they took Mookie Betts, extended him, took Freddie, extended him, or signed him. And then, I mean, they had, like this year, I think they had like 5 MVPs on their team. Now, granted, Bellinger is not that same guy anymore, but now it's the Mets. I mean, they're the team you got to think of as like, with Steve Cohen as like the big time spender, like, there's no limitation for how much they're going to spend.
Yeah.
So they got DeGrom. What are they going to do with DeGrom? I mean, there was a little bit of chatter even midseason that DeGrom, he's from Florida. He wanted to potentially play for the Braves, like, Southeast.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're saying his AAV is going to be like 45 to 50 million.
Whew.
And I mean, I just saw Zach Eflin just got a deal with the Rays, like 3 years, 40 million, which is like 13 AAV.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's like a middle to back end starter, and that he's getting like 13 million a year. So
that sets that bar of like,
I mean,
what multiplier of that is he getting?
I'm like, what is DeGrom and Verlander and Carlos Rodon of the Giants? He's a stud too that throws 99.
Yeah.
I mean, what are those guys going to get? I mean, I know Verlander wants to get the Max Scherzer 3-year high, like mid 40 AAV deal, but I mean, he's 39. I mean, are you going to give him that? I don't know, but the Dodgers will do it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think my biggest thing is where the 4 stud free agent shortstop's going to go.
It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt because apparently I have not loved how the Sox dealt with Bogarts or Devers, who I know Devers has an additional year, I think, of team control. But with kind of how everything started going, it seemed, if I remember correctly, they both turned down deals from the Sox. But how it trended, it was basically like, all right, Bogarts is already seemingly like, in his mind, he's gone.
Yeah.
And I do hope they keep Devers because, I don't know, it's crazy to think of how that infield looks now. And it was always like, oh, yeah, Pedroia, he's kind of here, but not here. And it's like, oh, yeah, we'll platoon it first. And it's like, now you got to figure out the other side of the infield. It's second at first. Like, and then you have to try and replace Xander Bogaerts. And God forbid if you have to replace Devers next year. Like, this team it's just going to implode at this point, which I am very glad that Bloom has reclaimed a like top 10 farm system for the Sox, or top 15, I want to say. Because, I mean, Dombrowski, in all his infinite wisdom years ago, he sold his soul for a World Series.
Oh, yeah.
And just depleted the farm system. And again, I mean, it's almost like a Rams thing. Like, you trade away your picks, you throw stupid money at people. It's good when you win, and then when you lose, you have to just wait a decade plus to try and, scoop everything back up and do it again. So, I don't know. I like the setup and the makeup and like what Bloom is doing. But I know it's pissing off a lot of the fan base because they're like, no, we broke the curse. It was how long ago was that? And like, we've been so successful in the last decade and a half. And it's like, yeah, but what about now? Like, this isn't going to be a worst to first thing. This is like, we're building it, which is not what the Red Sox ever do. They're like, no, we'll buy it. Yeah. So, I don't know.
So that's the thing. I mean, I actually did. I saw Marcelo Meyer, one of their stud free agent shortstop or prospect shortstops when I was watching Salem Red Sox game.
Yeah.
And he roped one off the left center gap. That kid's going to be a stud.
Yeah.
So I think you do have somebody probably waiting in the wings, but I mean, he's probably 2 to 3 years away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that they'll probably keep Devers of the two. I think if you're looking offensively upside, I think Devers probably, has more upside because he can be a 30 plus home run bat, 40 double guy. I mean, Bogarts is extremely consistent, though. I was looking at his stats, and just being a Braves fan and seeing that Dansby's a free agent, and what Bogarts brings to the table, they were showing he's basically every year he's going to hit 300. Every year he's going to hit you. I mean, he had that one year where he had like 33 home runs, but I mean, he's going to usually hit you 15, 25 home runs. He's going to drive in a lot of runs. I mean, he had his best defensive year, they said, this year. And if you understand like the OPS stat, he was, or weighted runs created plus, those different stats that a lot of people like to throw out there. He's well above average offensively. So I think when people like kind of rank the 4 shortstops, I think it usually people look at Correa and Turner as like 1, 2, and then they look at Bogarts and Swanson as 3, 4. But I mean, both Bogarts and Swanson both had awesome years this year. Swanson had his best year, which was good timing. But I'll be eager to see what happens. I know Dansby Swanson's fiance. She plays soccer professionally for a Chicago club. She's on the U.S. women's national soccer team. So there's rumors that he's going to potentially try to go play with the Cubs, so he'll be closer to her.
Oh, man. Okay.
So we'll see what happens. But, I mean, the Braves have a stud shortstop prospect, Von Grissom. He's 21. He got a cup of coffee last year. Played pretty well, for August, September, and then kind of faded down the stretch. So I don't know if they're ready to just hand him the keys, but it's an option internally. But we'll see what happens. I mean, that's the thing about Alex Anthopoulos, the Braves GM. He's lauded as like one of the best in the league. He's locked up so many guys to long-term deals. I mean, and they're like team-friendly deals too. I mean, with Acuna, Albies, Austin Riley, Matt Olson, Michael Harris, Strider, all of them have long-term deals. And I think a lot of franchises are like, throw out the meme. How does he keep getting away with this? Like, there's a lot of people that are throwing that out just because they're signing guys and they're like, how in the world did he sign for that? But I think he's kind of getting them to sign early and create that security for them. So you can't ever discredit somebody for taking a guaranteed deal. I think everybody wants to see what Judge did. He bet on himself. And, I heard Ken Rosenthal today say that based on what he was offered last offseason to what he's going to be offered this offseason, he made himself like 80 to 100 million more by betting on himself. So now granted, Aaron Judge had like the best season other than like maybe some Barry Bonds years. He had one of the best seasons I've ever seen. So it's not going to usually always work out like that, but for him, it definitely did.
Oh, Judge is about to ride off into the sunset. And I mean, if the Yankees don't pay him if they don't, I guess I'll say overpay him, whatever he ends up getting elsewhere, he's one of those guys where it's like, he is like New York baseball. Like, he fits that mold so well, but, him being that California guy and being able to go play for his hometown and also get paid stupid money.
Yep.
Like, that's a win-win. Like, that, go finish your career in your home state, and like, why not? I mean, that's the way to do it right there. And like you're saying, like, they randomly have their boom seasons. Like, wouldn't he love to be paid stupid money? Them at some point in that contract have that one season and maybe have a good postseason run and maybe get into a World Series, because you never know what it's going to look like in a couple of years with team makeup and all that kind of stuff. So. Yeah, well,
it's one of those things. I mean, like the Giants, I mean, you can't sit here. I mean, people that want to say, why wouldn't he go back to the Yankees? Why wouldn't he want to be the new captain of the Yankees?
Yeah.
Well, if you look at recent World Series buys, I mean, the Giants have 3 World Series since the Yankees have won a World Series.
Yep.
And, they won 100. I mean, it was random that they won 106 last year or 2 years ago, but I mean, they've had overall probably better success here recently, and San Francisco's ballpark is beautiful.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't know what the Yankees would do if they lost Judge. Like, how do you replace that?
Mm-hmm.
So
And that's funny you say that, by the way. I know because, of course, my family is all upstate New York, Yankees fans. And so me being a Red Sox fan is almost not allowed, but they tolerate me, I guess, because I'm blood.
Mhm.
But it's funny because it would always be like you see the shirts when we go up there, and it's the one where it has like all the Yankees like World Series, like the rings lined up
Yep.
next to like at the time the Sox, like just a couple of them.
Yeah.
And it was always that was always the thing of like, oh yeah, but who has more? I'm like, how far back are we going, dude? Like
Yeah.
before you were alive? Like
40s,
no, let's consider the
20s.
ones of like what's happening now.
Yeah. And then the Red Sox have had more success than the Yankees. I mean, let's see here. So the Yankees won in '09. So the Red Sox won in '04, '07, '13, '18. So,
Yeah.
geez, they've got 2 more World Series just since the Yankees have last won. So I think the thing is right now with the Yankees, I feel like they're not as close to a World Series as some people think they might be. The Astros, in my opinion, are way better than the Yankees. It shows
I hate that.
they
Those cheaters.
dominate them in the playoffs. Like every year, they dominate them. Last year they swept them in the ALCS. wasn't even close. And then they just got a Jose Abreu.
That's huge.
We'll see what the Astros do with Verlander, but even without Verlander, they have some pretty legit starters, and their bullpen is lights out. Their offense just got better.
Yeah.
So I think right now, if I had to guess, like make a little World Series prediction going into next year, it's crazy to say this because it's not fun, but I can't not put the Astros back in the World Series.
Yeah.
They were in the World Series in 2017 when the cheating scandal happened. Which everybody obviously hates them for, but at this point, you kind of have to respect the fact that even beyond that, they're nasty. So, I would probably put the Astros, and then in the National League, I don't know. It just kind of depends on how the offseason breaks.
Yeah.
But I will. I'm probably gonna go with my Braves, man. I want to probably put the Dodgers and not be a homer, but the Dodgers. They're not a guarantee every year to get to the World Series. Like I think a lot of people think too. They've kind of choked in the World Series. If you know Frank the Tank on Barstool, he listed his top 5 choking fan bases or teams, and he had the Dodgers as number 3 on his list. So
that was Kershaw's shadow the whole time. Was just like, yeah, is he elite though? Like he can't do it at the right time.
They won the COVID like kind of Mickey Mouse year with no fans. Even that they were down 3-1 to the Braves in the NLCS. So it's just one of those things. Like they haven't won a legit 162 game World Series, and they have an insane payroll. So it's just one of those things. We'll see what happens, but it all kind of just breaks out to what the offseason shapes out. It looks like it's going to be one of those offseason where there's going to be a lot of overpaying for these free agents.
Yeah. Honestly, aside from the shortstops, it's not stacked with talent.
No.
Everywhere else, but yeah, every offseason it does. Just because the talent is not there compared to a previous year, it doesn't mean that the teams don't have to pay for it. So it's going to be interesting to see, like in a year or two, what some of those contracts looks like with some of those players. But
even Trevor Story.
Yeah.
Are you happy? Are you happy with the Trevor Story signing a year later?
Honestly, I'm okay with it because I think if they would have made that signing way sooner in the offseason and felt like they were betting against other people instead of just themselves, I felt like they were going to grossly overpay. And granted, I do think they overpaid a bit, but I think them waiting a little bit in the offseason, kind of feeling it out and being like, if we lose him because someone else overpays too much, we'll live with that. But if we wait a little bit, we feel like we can get somewhat of a discount. And it is somewhat of an insurance policy with Xander. I don't know if they already had the sense that Xander was gone, or
that's what I was going to say.
That I didn't want to believe it when it happened. That was the thought. There was more so. Pedroia's not here anymore. Even when he wasn't really here for the last five or so years. So let's throw Story over at second and make it happen. But I do feel better that you can slide Story over to short and we can figure out the right side of the infield. But yeah, we'll see. I think, yeah.
Javi Baez, I can't imagine Tigers fans are happy with that contract. That contract looks looks awful right now. So
Yeah.
that's the thing. As baseball fans, we want, and even NFL fans and NBA fans. I mean, NBA and NFL gets all the glamour for the Woj bombs and the shams and
Yeah.
Adam Schefter and all that. Just the bombs and the day one, day two free agency and whatnot.
Yeah.
Baseball, it's a little different. You're having to wait, which kind of sucks. But it's not all about just overpaying and getting I mean, you're a guy, you're thinking you're a guy, but it's probably having to pay him like even Dansby, for example. I mean, this was his best year, and he's probably going to try to get 25 million. And I think if the Braves had tried to sign him last offseason, they would have probably given him like 15 million.
Yep.
So 1 year is a $10 million boost AAV for next 5-6 years. I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, it's not always about, okay, did you have the sexy offseason and make all the big name splash free agent signings? Because in 2-3 years, I mean, that could be awful contracts. Yeah. So you have to be kind of smart with your money, but I know that can be sometimes boring. So,
well, I'm definitely looking forward to coming back to this and testing that World Series hypothesis for next year. And
I mean, it would be a repeat of the 21 World Series.
That's right.
So,
and I know we've got to go dive into some Thursday night football. I think we're probably somewhere in the second quarter at this point. But Taylor, I want to say thank you for coming on, and the guest always gets the last word. So if there's a shout out you want to give, inspirational quote, a cheers to somebody, and I added this one recently. If you want to throw an insult, any of them are okay.
No, man, I'm just gonna give you a shout out. Give you a cheers for having me on here, and give me the ability to explore some topics with you and talk fantasy and football and baseball. I'm always down to come back on and explore different topics, man. It's always fun.
Awesome, I appreciate it, Taylor. We'll catch up soon and we'll see how this baseball offseason goes.
All right, man. See you.
See you, bud.